It's reading hour, I guess. It's time to celebrate. Welcome to the Writers Read celebration, our 7th annual Writers Read. I can't believe we've been doing this for this long. I'm only, 13 years old. So I can't believe I've been doing it for 7 years, but I'm glad you all showed up tonight. And we have some wonderful writers. We have 12 writers with us here in this room, and then we have a writer on Zoom from Canada. So this makes it an international event. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm Nancy McCarthy. I'm your host for the evening. And I just wanted to let you know that our celebration is being sponsored by Northwest Artists Committee, our Northwest Authors Series Committee. And we have a few of those members here. Our former library board president, Phyllis Burnt, is our chair, and she is not with us tonight, but she is zooming in, I think, as well. And I'm on the committee. Doug Sagano is on the committee. Doug, raise your hand. You probably met him when you came through the door. Wanda Meyer Price. Wanda made our cookies, most of our cookies. All are here for the cookie, right? Because that's what I kept talking to people. I kept saying, if you don't come for the writers, you come for the cookies. So I'm glad that you're all here. And Cami Lira was one of our members of our committee to select the writers. So, you can always just look at
We did the hard part, not the writing part.
Very, very true. Also, we had help from our library manager, Jen Dixon. Without her, we could never have put this together. She is not with us at the moment, but she did a great job. Corey Lee is doing our Zoom. Thank you, Corey. So we had a lot of help. It's a great event. It's a community event, and we really appreciate you showing up to listen to our writers. This year we had the theme of rising tide, and I'm not sure how we came up with it. We debated several different themes this year, but we came up with rising tide, and it proved to be quite a challenge to many of our writers. Let's just say that we got quite interesting pieces. And I won't go into that. In our flyers, we said that the theme rising tide could flow in myriad directions. Anticipation of change in a person's life, relationship, or community. Or maybe it could signal an approaching flood or tsunami. Maybe it brings opportunity, promise, social justice, or perhaps the tide rises just before a fall. We received 85 submissions this year, more than we've ever had before, and we appreciate all of them. We selected 15 pieces, and as Tammy said, it was a hard thing to do. It was very, very difficult. And we based our selections on how closely they followed the theme, their word usage, the writing style, and mostly the emotions that the piece evoked. And believe me, when we talked about emotions, I'd say, "Oh, I really like that one," and everybody goes, "No." And others would say, "I really like that one," and I go, "No, I don't think so." So it was an interesting debate that we had. Each entry was limited to 600 words, and a person could turn in up to 3 entries. The committee chose the pieces without knowing who wrote them. So as you will hear tonight, these poems and short stories took a variety of turns. We received stories about a woman who lifted a whale off the beach, flowers floating from Ukraine, about a body about to be buried, an evening walk to Haystack Rock, and shipwrecks and wrack lines. So we have a whole variety of submissions. Now I'm going to start the program, and after everyone has read, I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions and comments. So if you have any questions, if you want to ask a particular author a question, just write it down, and we will ask that question after the session is over. So tonight I'm going to introduce our first writer, and that is Phyllis Thompson. I have her here. Phyllis lived on a sailboat for 4 years. I became very interested in tides. And she now lives in Manzanita, and she's looking for a publisher for her memoir, Sailing Between Sea and Sky, What I Learned from the Ocean About Life on Earth. She loves how tides here on the coastal edge keep reminding us that everything moves. And I think her poem is pretty moving. Please help me welcome our first reader, Phyllis Thompson, who will read the poem, The Top.
This is very short, and I seem to have organized this stuff really well because basically I am the science piece. So it's called The Tides, and as soon as I turned it in, I thought another title for this poem could be, Did You Know? Earth's envelope of water swells toward the moon, and Cannon Beach turns into the rising tide. Barnacles comb dinner from the sea. Then the moon's waves moves on, and Cannon Beach slides into the ebb. Plovers scurry to the shore for their lunch. Earth's waters circle the globe in great waves every day, lifting to the sun, rising to the moon. And we may have a diagram of this. Lunar and solar bulges, leaf tides, and so that's the science from it.
And I want to remind everyone that to speak up, project your voice. We have a lot of people here, and when you have a lot of people, it absorbs the sound. So please speak up as loud as you can because we don't have a microphone. So loud. Our next writer is John Chiminello from Nacelle, Washington.
Yay!
This is what John says about his poetry. In this world of digital feudalism, virtual reality tends to disorient and dislocate us from the land. My poetry is an attempt to remember the earth. Each morning, I do a walkabout to listen to the winds in the hemlocks, the chickadees busy with breakfast, and the waking ground as it swells with light. I sniff the scents of morning and taste the sweet, moist air of beginnings. My poetry is an expansion of what I see and feel in the real world, the outside world, before going inward. I like to think of my poems as a blend of musings, missions, medicines, and mischief. And tonight we will get a little of that mischief when he reads his poem, King Tides at Cape Disappointment. John, would you please come on up?
The poem is King Tides at Cape Disappointment. At the sliver of the new year, on the morning of crab season, we join a row of photographers balanced on driftwood and riprap, tripods on picnic tables. As the king tide rises and draws down the moon to turn salt into foam, wind into spindrift, we wait for the picture perfect wave. Patience at Cape Disappointment. The sea gives back in time what the shutters and cell phones can never take away. One wave roils on the rocks and climbs halfway up the cliff to the lighthouse. Another rolls in like a giant spiral nautilus, chambered with the secrets of the sea. The stench of rotted seaweed cuts through me like a ghost. And I remember reading that Waikiki Beach was named in honor of a Hawaiian mariner who died and was buried here 200 years ago with no one to sing for him except the cedars, spruce, and hemlocks. And today, I watch the watchers as they grumble about the crowds, the wind chill, better years for award-winning photos. And I enjoy your eye for pictures as you see dragon-headed driftwood, dogs dressed in fancy coats, and a little girl balanced between the rocks and a log wedge from another rising tide. You and me hold fast for a piece of this moment, a splinter in time from a shipwreck, or a broken sliver from the great ark, the original high water mark. And we leave the beach as we found it, and like all of the ghosts before us, we learn to celebrate the disappointment of living, the badge of almost catching a rising tide, or taking a photo of a near perfect moment.
Next, we will hear from Colleen Medlock. Colleen is a history and language arts teacher in the Beaverton School District, living part-time in Seaside when school is not in session. She writes historical fiction and nonfiction history. Colleen will read her flash fiction, Shifting Tides.
The tide brought many things to the sandy shore of the quiet town. On a calm morning, it might bring tiny crabs scurrying over the rippled sand, or long strands of seaweed draped along the water's edge. After a storm, it might bring trinkets and treasures from other shores, an old glass bottle, a rusty tin can, or even a buoy from a faraway port. On this particular morning, the tide brought a woman. It was an early morning surfer who found her. He dragged her in from the shallows where the salty water lapped at her still body, and he tossed her onto the wet sand. Flinging back his hair, he scooped the wet sand from her mouth and began counting out chest impressions. A cough and a sputter, and suddenly the woman was gasping for air. She was alive. She batted the young man's arms away from her heaving, seaweed-entangled chest and scrambled to her feet. She took a few unsteady steps, straining to lift her green velour dress and the multiple layers of soaked petticoats beneath it. She wore a tightly corseted bodice and had long dark hair that hung in wet coils around her shoulders, a pearl hair comb still lodged askew in the back. She looked as if she had stepped out of the 18th century. The surfer shook his head. "What were you thinking trying to swim in that costume?" The woman just stared at him, looked out at the sea, and clutched anxiously at her skirts. Your dress," the surfer said. "You should have taken off your costume so you could swim. Did your party boat capsize or something?" "Donde está mi esposa?" the woman whispered, her eyes darting about wildly. "Your husband?" The surfer glanced up and down the beach, shrugging. "You're the only one here. I'm going to call 911, though, don't worry." He dug his cell phone out of his backpack and held it aloft for a signal. "Mi esposa," the woman repeated. She shuffled towards the water's edge, fear in her eyes as she scanned the horizon. She waded in up to her waist, the detritus of an ocean voyage bobbing around her. Plank of wood from the hull, a shredded fragment of a sail, ivory candle burned almost to its wick, a woman's feathered hat. The objects seemed out of place, as if they'd been swept in from the rising tide of another time. "Hey, lady," the surfer said, "I just saved you. who sighed and moved to follow her into the water to save her again, but stopped short when something caught his eye. An old-fashioned, four-masted clipper ship rounding the cape. As it neared, it caught a glint of the morning sun, and he saw that it carried the Spanish flag. The woman saw it too. Her shoulders relaxed, and she smiled. El Capitan, mi esposa, she said. She piled her wet hair atop her head and secured it with her comb, then sank into the water. With 3 strong kicks, she was gliding toward the ship, her heavy skirts swirling behind her. Then both she and the ship disappeared. The surfer blinked. He stared at the horizon where the ship had been, and then at the shoreline, where a moment earlier a piece of torn canvas sail had washed up, muddied and frayed. Now it was gone, as was the rest of the shipwreck's flotsam. The water was clear and calm and undisturbed. And in the distance, unseen, the ship continued onward towards its port of call, unfettered by the storms.
And it makes you think about that. All right. Jennifer Nightingale is a poet, novelist, and short story writer. She is the author of the Pacific Northwest coming-of-age tale, Alberta and the Spark. Jennifer is also a regular at Rick's Open Poetry Mic in Astoria on Pure 11 every first Tuesday. She has read her works in Seattle, Vancouver, British Columbia, Wrexham, Wales, and at the Fisher Poets Gathering. She has also read at the Warrenton Library, the Hoffman Center for the Arts, and at Trash Tales in Tillamook County. She lives in Astoria with her husband Holt Moore and dog Mickey. And I want to mention that a lot of the authors, they talk about their husbands and their wives and don't mention them, don't name them, but they name their animals. At least Holt got first filling this time, right? They can be seen walking the river beach in search of trash, rubber balls, and familiar faces. Please help me welcome Jennifer Nightingale. She is a perennial reader at the Writers' Read celebration. She knows the tide is rising.
Thank you, Nancy. This has got to be one of the most welcoming places on planet Earth. How about some glasses? She knows the tide is rising. The estuarial belly lay naked and bubbling under the eye of the winter sun. A snowy egret takes advantage of a feast laid bare before her. She knows the tide is rising. She dances in the shallows on her graceful yellow feet and stands stock still on her waiting legs, grabs a small fish in her jet black beak. She knows the tide is rising. Bait shrimp, ghost crabs, lugworms, and a crowded party of invertebrates bubble and squeak and beg the moon to pull the sea in, so the rising tide can feed them. Creatures of the intertidal adapt to constant change and remain resilient, sending out ancient vibrations to signal the moon. The moon always responds and covers up their nakedness.
Jennifer will be back later in the program. Tonight we have a new writer to Writers Read, Christy Lund. Christy, who lives in Nehalem, is an instructional designer. When she's not reading, embroidering, or listening to music, she's enjoying her cats. Now, she didn't name her cats. She's enjoying her cats and trying to keep them from smacking the stuffing out of each other. This is Christy's first time at Writers Read Celebration. Please welcome her as she reads her poem, Heeding the Tide.
Meeting the tide. I made my way across a widening stream in the snow, as lovers and joggers and dogs and children did what they do on the shore. My shoes submerged, my socks soaked. Then the waves rolled in. I hadn't watched. I hadn't seen how high. My ankles, my shins, my knees were covered, and I laughed. Look, I'm so wet, I thought, apologetically, somehow self-conscious. The wave's motion swept back toward the open ocean, and I felt a flash of fear as my balance shifted with the sands flowing fast beneath my shoes. I wonder sometimes how it feels to die suddenly, an accidental death or sudden bodily crisis, signs unknown or unheeded as the causes piled toward ultimate consequence. Would I laugh like I did in the waves? How clumsy of me to be dying. What a predicament. Do you ever die in disbelief? This wasn't supposed to happen, except that it always will. I fell to my knees, but righted my ship, my little flesh and bone canoe. Around me, children and dogs, joggers and lovers did what they do on the shore. I sat in my car with sea in my shoes and sand on my pants, sun in my eyes, wondering which was the illusion, danger or safety.
Deanna Duplechain from Seaside is also a new reader to our group, but I know Deanna from the Coaster Theater. Deanna had the joy of working at Haystack Rock Awareness Program for 3 years. She loves the rock and recently wrote a children's play, Haystack Rocks, that was performed at the Coaster Theater. There were so many characters and moments at the rock that she is sure she could fill a book. Seeing Saturday is one little taste. Deanna loves writing and theater and will soon be directing the Norwegians at the coaster, and I urge you all to go because Deanna seeing her children's play, you're missing a good time. She brings much of that wonder to her story, Seeing Saturday. Please welcome her.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening. Maybe not everyone understands tides as well as Phyllis, so I'll just say in my story, I do some subheadings, and so when a tide is negative and the numbers get higher, it's going out, and when the numbers get higher and positive coming in, the tide's coming in. So just that would happen. Seeing Saturday. Negative 1.5 at 6:28 a.m. Today, Kaya and I are the early crew. Wearing official red coats and beanies, we watch the moon dissolve. Even invisible, the moon wrestles the ocean, exposing the private parts of Haystack Rock's marine garden. We get paid to do this. In unison, we clink our coffee cups. We voyeur with glee, peeling back drapes of seaweed to spy clown and lemon nudibranchs. The sea stars continue their comeback. All seems right with the world. Negative 1.2 at 7:42 a.m. We've surrounded our protectorate with signs, both the keep off the rocks variety and the gentler, how to tell a tufted puffin from a common muir kind. Mirage-y Walking Dead forms appear in the distance. The early ones are coming. Usually tourists who research the tides a bit, but some people just get lucky. Like this lady, Leslie from Sugarland, Texas, in wildly insensible shoes. Dang, girl, I'd like to wear my suit and lay out. Does it ever get hot here? Never. What's all this then? Shit ton of rocks. Y'all drag these out here? Rocks with abounding life. Nah, I didn't drag them. This is Haystack Rock, about 15 million years old, and these rocks fall off and lay buried under our feet or reveal themselves as the ocean pulls away or brings in what is known as a shit ton of sand. Alrighty, show me this life. My girlfriends are back at the hotel eating waffles and drinking mimosas. Hell, I do that at home. I lead her into the tide pools. Leslie ditches her mules at anemones, crawls on all fours at gooseneck barnacles, and goes wild-eyed with wonder at sea stars devouring mussels. Negative 0.9 at 9:01 a.m. You know those optical illusion drawings? Do you see the young maiden or the old hag? A vase or two people facing off? Well, that's the beauty of this place. In about an hour, Leslie goes from looking at rocks to seeing magic. Once she spots her first puffin unassisted, she's off to grab her girlfriends. They gotta see this as she runs back to her hotel. Hurry, the tide's coming in. Negative 0.5 at 9:37 a.m. A thin boy bundled in black stares at the rock. His dad, talking heatedly on his cell, waves the boy toward the tide pools now fitfully filling with water. Hey, I can show you some stuff, I offer. He nods. Herschel says he's tired because the sound of the ocean keeps him up all night. Herschel won't get his shoes wet. Come on then, jump. It's not even as wide as a bathtub, I encourage. I never take baths, you can drown. Settling for the edges, I teach him to scan the water for camouflaging tide pool sculpin. 0 at 10:08 a.m. Finally, he lets me place a hermit crab gently in his palm. He tickles, Herschel laughs, and brings the creature eye level. Hey, Herschel, come on, his dad motions to him. Herschel sets the tiny crab down delicately in the exact place we found him. He waves goodbye to the crab, and then he waves to me. He runs the best he can after his father, already far ahead. 1.4 at 11:26 a.m. What the hell happened here? Asked Leslie incredulously, now accompanied by a bevy of Texan ladies. The tide came in, I explained, packing the last of the signs in the pickup. I swear it was amazing, Leslie says, already talking to their backs. Next time, Mexico, her friend says. I watch the day drinkers weave away. I will see you again tomorrow, I say to Haystack before pulling away.
Very nice.
Comments about the rock remind me of what I hear as an information person at the farmer's market during the summer. I've had people come up and ask me, what do you do with the rock at night? And I kind of wonder what it is we do with the rock at night. And then I have people say who will absolutely swear that the rock, when they were here last time, was downtown. How did we move that rock all the way back up the beach? So you never know. And then I've also had people tell me that the ocean was east instead of west. Yeah, about 3,000 miles. So you never know who you're going to get when they come to the beach for the first time. Russell Myers from Vancouver, Washington, grew up in Vancouver. And due to a conflict of schedule he had last March, he was unable to submit a story to Writers Read. Now, our theme last year was beach noir. I think many of you remember trying to grapple with that theme. So what he did this time was to challenge himself to write a beach noir story that included rising tide. You're really glutton for punishment. He has published 3 mystery novels: Whitefish in 2022, Missed the Target in 2024, and The Body in Ravenswood Park, a cozy mystery, which has just been released on Amazon. The hardest part of writing this story, he says, was to stop writing at 600 words, or in this case, 593. And all of those words are fun to listen to in an odd sort of way. So let's hear Russell's story, The Body.
And thank you to the Northwest Authors Select Committee for hosting this event or sponsoring it. A few days before I wrote this story, my wife, Sarah, we were watching a show, and a question came out at the show, or on the show. It was if you needed help burying a body or getting rid of a body, which of your friends would you call first? And I was thinking about it. It was kind of a hard question. I was thinking about it, and my wife looked at me and said, "All your friends would call you." And I don't know if that was a compliment or not, but I took it as one. So that tells you something about me. Okay, my story, The Body. As I look out through the van's front window, I see a road sign at the next intersection, Hemlock Street. Fitting. But it was probably named after the tree and not the plant. Oregon is full of trees. Nice place, coastal town. Seems dead tonight. Fitting. This is a great place to park. Sidewalks. The stores are all closed, but there are plenty of cars around. I saw a few people going into the library. Must be an event. Cops shouldn't bother me here. My phone finally has coverage again. 3 bars. No new messages. It'll be plenty dark by 8, but I'm supposed to wait. The tide is still rising, the boss explained. If you throw the body in before high tide, it'll wind up back on the beach. Then he informed me that the next high tide isn't until 9 o'clock, 2 hours from now. 2 hours. I need to get out of this van. It takes a while, but once the body starts to smell, it only gets worse. I'd roll down the windows, but I can't have someone walking by and noticing. And they'd notice. I wonder what it does to a person's lungs breathing this in. The body must have been in the trunk of that car for a few days. I should have brought a bag with me instead of a tarp. Why didn't I bring a bag? I'm not sure why the boss was so specific, but he must know the area. Arcadia Beach, he insisted. There's a small parking area right off Highway 101 with easy beach access, close to the water. You might have to wait until people clear out, but at this time of the year, nobody should be there that late. Nobody. But 2 hours? I can't sit here for that long, not like this. I look for an air freshener in the glove box. I'd even settle for one of those trees. It would probably take 100 of them. A damn forest with those little green pine-scented trees. Nothing. Half a roll of breath mints and an owner's manual. What the heck? It couldn't hurt. As soon as I put one of the mints into my mouth, it makes a difference. Peppermint. I knew a guy once, he had put menthol under his nose. Vicks. Carried it with me everywhere. I should have stopped and bought some when I had the chance. I looked at my phone again. 7:10. Maybe that little general store I passed is still open. Maybe. But I hate to lose this parking spot. I wonder where that guy is now. What was his name? The Vicks guy. Smart guy. He knew how to get rid of the smell. He probably wound up in the water too. Arcadia Beach. I better not chew the mints. Yeah, right. They'll be gone in 5 minutes, maybe sooner. I wonder what's happening at the library. Look at all the cars. Everybody must be inside. What the hell? After I get out of the van, I lock the doors. Then I stand on the sidewalk for a moment. It smells like that can permeate. I sniff the sleeve of my jacket, but I can't tell. Maybe the breeze is helping. Maybe the trees, the real ones. As I walk up to the library's door, I see a flyer. Writers Read. wonder what kind of event that is. Writers Read. Looks busy inside. And then I see the words rising tide on the flyer. I guess that's the theme for tonight. Kidding.
How far you can get when you mention writers read. Now we'll get nothing but entries that say writers read. Mimi Madero is a poet who lives in Cape Mears. She has been a member of the 29th Street Writers for more than 25 years. This is Mimi's first appearance at the Writers Read celebration. Tonight she will read 3 haiku. Please help me welcome. Thank you.
I was inspired by this theme of the rising tide. And I've only lived at the beach now for a year or so, moving here from the Columbia Gorge. So I've been paying attention more to the rising tide. So I was inspired by the theme. Breaking waves crash. What will the rising tide bring? Smack of jellyfish. Spilling waves, cresting. What will the rising tide bring? Anticipation. Ocean swells surge. What will the rising tide bring? Strength for the future.
Maybe will you read them all again, please?
Yes.
3 haiku, that's 9 lines. Breaking wave crashes. What will the rising tide bring? Smack of jellyfish. Spilling waves, cresting. What will the rising tide bring? Anticipation. Ocean swell surge. What will the rising tide bring? Strength for the future.
Please help me welcome Colleen Medlock back. She will read her flash fiction, A Light in the Storm.
It was the worst storm that the village had seen for decades, maybe a century. It slammed into the harbor without warning, screeching its arrival with gale-force winds and a deluge that capsized several of the fishing boats along the old pier. The villagers huddled in their hillside cottages, securing their shutters and gathering their frightened children around the hearth. Just beyond the harbor, the captain of a small clipper ship desperately tried to keep his ship afloat in the roiling and rising tides. He had been blown off course and now aimed the bow toward a new North Star, a single flickering light in a small harbor, and ordered his crew to hold steady. But the ship's oak hull was no match for the jagged rocks at the harbor's mouth. The great splintering of wood and a rush of icy water sent a dozen men overboard. A dozen more clung to the rails and the masts, holding on for dear life. "We're taking on water, Captain," cried the first mate. "We won't make it into the harbor." The captain watched the light as it moved along the shore. "They see us," he said, his knuckles white against the ship's wheel. "Hold steady." On shore, the watchman stood on the beach and braced himself against the wind. The lantern flickered in his hand, threatening to sputter out. Squinting into the endless dark, he scanned the harbor. The blacksmith, pushing against the wind, made his way down the dunes. "Everyone's accounted for, Earl," he said breathlessly as he reached the shore. "Hold on, Will," the watchman said. Something had caught his eye. "Did you see that?" "No, Earl, I don't see anything. Let's go." The Earl pointed. "Out there, beyond the shoal. Thought I saw something." The men shielded their eyes from the stinging rain as they peered out into the swirling sea. Nothing. And then the tip of a mast bobbed above the crest of a wave and disappeared again. "A ship," Earl said. "We can muster the men and go out in the dinghies." Will shook his head. "It's unreachable." Earl held the lantern higher. "Perhaps if—" "It's too dangerous," Will said, reaching for the lantern. "Besides, they're already foundering. Even if we could get out there in the storm, We can't reach them in time. Earl hesitated, then nodded and handed the light to Will. He told himself the sea would take what it wanted. He had lived along this rocky coast long enough to know that. As the faint cries of the drowning carried on the wind and pierced his conscience, he looked away. The two men hustled back up the dunes trail toward the warmth and safety of their cottages, the light disappearing with them. On board the ship, the last man watched helplessly as the light moved slowly up and over the hill until it was gone. They looked at each other, panic-stricken, knowing that their only hope for rescue had been extinguished with that flame. The captain watched in shock as the light disappeared. They would leave us to drown within sight of the beach, he bellowed, his surprise turning to hopelessness and then to outrage. His remaining crew, ever loyal to their captain, joined him in hurling curses at the villagers, curses on their children and their children's children. As the ship went down and the crew's voices were silenced one by one, each last breath promised that the villagers would forever rue the day they turned their backs on a ship caught in a storm outside their harbor.
Robert Michael Kyle, ecologist, has studied natural history and written essays, poetry, fiction, and science along a tributary of the lower Columbia River since 1978. His 30 books include the Northwest classics Wintergreen, Sky Time in Gray's River, and Where Bigfoot Walks, the novel Magdalena Mountain, and a flight of butterfly books. The latest of his 5 poetry collections, Swimming with Snakes, will appear with Watershed Press in 2025. Bob is a John Burroughs medalist, a Guggenheim Fellow, 5-time Pushcart Prize nominee, 3-time Washington Book Award winner, and PEN America Art of the Essay finalist. He has worked, taught, researched, and read poems on 6 continents, most recently in South America last week. Although he may still be suffering jet lag, Bob will read his poem, All Boats Rise.
Yay! And it's got cool toenails.
Thanks, Nancy, for doing this. Well, this is a shit ton of fun. What a lot of good stories and poems. Yeah, always a bridesmaid with that pushcart prize. Don't know what you have to do. All boats rise. A rising tide lifts all boats, goes the saying. That makes sense for real boats on the Pacific, in the Columbia, anywhere the boats can go and the moon's gentle tug holds sway. Also a metaphor for trickle down, that old adage, where boats are people and tide the economy. It suggests that when the rich get richer, the poor get richer too, otherwise known as Reaganomics. Well, maybe it worked that way once, though I doubt it. But these days, when the richest men in the world call the shots, and the working tugs fall ever more behind the super yachts, not so much. But on that near or distant day, when the tide rises big, when waves lap the steps of Trump Tower, and the Googleplex is nothing but an island in the bay, a resting place for monarchs on the echoes of winter. Well, then the boats will really rise, every one, along with the bergs of melting ice. Will the last then be first, and the meek inherit the earth at last? Well, maybe, though I doubt it. Only the tides will tell. Thank you.
Our next reader is Grace Page. She's our international writer
Oh.
from Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. Hello, Grace. Grace.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Grace
Hi.
is joining us from her home in Red Deer, Alberta, Canada by Zoom this evening. She's a little chagrined that she is missing the opportunity to be here in person with all of us by 65 days because she will be returning to Cannon Beach on May 11th for her 34th annual visit. The Page family drove to Cannon Beach from Alberta every summer since 1991 and declared it to be their happiest place on earth. I've heard other people talk about Cannon Beach that way. Since the passing of her husband in 2021, Grace continues to make her way to the coast with her adult daughter to connect with dear friends here and with the sea. Grace is a member of a writers group in Red Deer named Ink Blot, and she is grateful for the encouragement and camaraderie it brings. As a retired teacher, she volunteers as a tutor for the city's public library adult literacy program, working with Ukrainian newcomers to Canada.
Oh, good for you.
Thanks to Grace, Writers Read has become an international event. Please help me welcome her as she reads her poem, An Evening Walk to Haystack.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Nancy. And I'll be sure to stop in and say hello in a couple of weeks when my daughter Sarah and I are there. I'm really enjoying our evening together today, being part of the listeners and the readers and the writers across the miles. And thanks for having me and for inviting me. In May of 2016, it was a foggy night, as some stories begin, but it was a foggy evening at the close of a warm day. And my husband, Patrick, chose to stay in our rustic beachfront cabin that we were renting just a block south of the Tolovana Inn that year. And I decided to go for one more walk along the beach for an evening walk to Haystack. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, very clear.
Okay, here we go. An evening walk to Haystack. As coastal fog enshrouds me, the sun is nestled in downy clouds, lowering it gently to the waves. I stroll just above the surf line, my soul's baptized with Pacific waters. I see only 7 steps of where I've tread, and 7 more what lies ahead. I'm not the only meditative pilgrim pulled northward through the haze to the rock. How soon will it emerge? There is no urgency. Shells and kelp, round black pebbles, jelly, feathers, fallen castles, names and hearts drawn on the sand. The moon's pull takes all and wipes the slate. Tabula rasa. Inhale. Exhale. Repeat. A gift of sand-worn glass, green and smooth, waits for my hand. What a find. A soothing stone that will too soon make its way back to the prairies. There she is, 16 million years old, a basalt black apartment block, adorned, alive, with sea stars and cucumber, anemone, limpets, and mussels exposed by the ebbing. Hermit crabs scuttle amongst the barnacles and urchins. And we gather to honor, protect, and celebrate. Oh, bathing in her fragrant songs, time stands still. Enters my soul. Will the elusive octopus visit the pools tonight? Puffins and terns tucked in. Eagles return to their nests. And the cormorants and gulls from their penthouse nests to the congregants below cry out, tides come, tides come. Now southbound, I'm lulled by the rhythm of my steps and the music of the sea. Breathe deep. My heart is tidal. It is not a phase. I shall return.
Thank you. Please do stop by the library.
Thank you. I shall.
Okay.
But you won't have the cookies.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't keep the cookies for you. I promise.
Well, maybe I'll stop at the Haystack Bakery and bring some for you.
Oh. Thank you. All right. Florence Sage is an MC and a regular reader at the monthly Rick's Poetry Mic at Winecraft in Astoria. She has been a poetry columnist for Hip Fish Monthly and a poetry presenter for dozens of area literary events. Her full-length poem collections are Nevertheless, Poems from the Gray Area, the poetic memoir of her youth, The Man Who Whistled, a Polish-Canadian story, and What to Do with Night. Though she often makes the things up, this poem, never mind, is truly about her. Please help me welcome Florence Sage, who is never mind.
And hello to Grace, fellow Canadian. I was born in Hamilton.
Oh,
I like to see your sweatshirt with the Cannon Beach rock.
well, just a shout out to the Exit Sunset Shop, which is just behind Pizza Feta. The artist creates these herself, and I see her shop is still in business, which is lovely to see.
Thank you. I find myself surprised to realize I appeared here tonight in Zelensky green.
Yeah.
I think it's on my mind.
Couldn't you have worn a suit?
Not until the war is over. No. Love and Queen. Well, I could have written about the fact that I check the tides every day before I go to walk with my dog, so I'll know whether he's going to be caked in mud or have a nice dip in the bay and wash himself. I check the tides every day, but I started thinking about how we live with the tsunami coming someday, and thinking about how practical denial can be. So this is called, but never mind. The coast of Northern California shook in December. A good shake it was. Down to the city it shook, and northward almost up to us to show that it could and will again, a recurring memento mori. And so I did too. It shake just a bit, shook inside, shook with the dread I kept suppressing in my gut off and on for nearly 40 years, because everyone knows by now what the big one would be like when the plates let go. The West Coast grinds and groans and rises and sinks, and water rolls in large and hard beyond any timber or king tide. But no one wants to even picture it or be around when the waves roar in. to swallow us up and carry our bodies out to sea alone. No one does. Not scared all the way to death, though. Not us. We live with it. We stay. We have beauty bursting out our hearts, out our windows. Green August and Decembers, the wet, the chill. My favorite redwood, my citrus spruce, the Douglas firs, moss, undulating kelp, and haystack rocks, algae on tidal sand, brackish water, the long tempo of the tides, a broad river that smells of swimming fish. We have hardy oily salmon, mussels on rocks, pelicans, white and brown that settle on the bay, lounging deer and elk and everything we've all talked about tonight, and my dog. Luca. Chop it out. The hum of our lives and all our people and stuff, yours and mine, going town to town, shop to shop, good and small. Our poems and songs in wine bars, go and dance on stage, and everywhere we are, our art will leave. And really, I just had my picket fence repaired. My pear tree pruned, the native twinberry from Bob planted in the back. Got new stain for the deck for summer. Changed the faucet, put safety treads on the stairs. As if we're here, not any minute to drown like rats. Or to last. When we're not, so very not. But never mind that.
How many of us really do have go bags?
We don't want to talk about it.
Never mind.
Denial, denial.
And hard bags. All set. Christy Ellis lives in Astoria with her husband and their two dogs, Arlo and Bodie. And her husband, of course, goes unnamed. She recently discovered her love for writing while tackling her memoirs for her family. The theme for this year immediately struck a chord with her because a rising tide is exactly how she has been feeling due to the uncertainty our country is going through right now. Her writing reflects her journey through those emotions. Christy's piece is titled All at Sea. She is here for the first time.
Yay! Thank you. All at sea. I feel it building from deep within my belly, flushing up through my neck. Something like anger, close to fear, edging on panic, as if panic will help. A surge of misplaced adrenaline careening through my bloodstream, resulting in a wash of anxiety. It lives under the surface, a sense of dread mingled with a dash of hope. It's the dash of hope that will kill you, causing you to lose your bearing. Is that a rescue light on the horizon or just another buoy light, reminding me I am still in peril, rescue within reach, but highly unlikely. The fear of the real and the imagined all at once. I must remain calm, breathe, all while treading wildly, mustering the strength and wisdom to not let go. The thought of slipping under is tempting. Don't slip beneath the waves. I must stay afloat. Tossed overboard by mutinous sailors, the ship with the madman at the helm. A warship stirring up storms just to watch them enter port. The villagers standing along the docks, welcoming in the tempest, ignorantly unaware of the damage being wrought by the squall. Cheering the marauders into port, defiantly ignoring the plight of their fellow citizens, pretending no one has been shanghaied, no one is in danger. If they themselves stand strong on dry land, then what could be the matter? I could float to an island, one way off the coast, and wait for the storm to subside. A deserted island with only my own survival at hand. I might be okay, but what about the others? Is it okay to push the rising tide down deep beneath my breastbone and watch from a distant shore? Wait until the coast is clear? The answer would be an easy one if my life was the only one at stake.
Teetering between madly thrashing about and serenely accepting my fate, I remind myself, I am made of stronger stuff than this. I have weathered many storms. I must build a raft from the flotsam of these thoughts, build it strong. Dead reckon my way through the fear and uncertainty to land upon the shore. No longer rudderless, but steel to the quick. Yes.
Evan, all right. Evan Morgan Williams has been coming to the Oregon coast since his family purchased a cabin in Neocony in 1970. At the time, rustic would be a generous word to describe it, but now it is appropriately ship-shape. Evan received a 2024 Oregon Literary Fellowship. He has published 3 collections of stories, many of which are set along the Pacific coast. For this event, his story is an excerpt from a much longer piece, but it stands alone as a smaller story with a large one. Evan paints a wonderful word picture with his flash fiction, The Great Black Shape. It's your turn, Evan.
So Grace and Colleen, I am a retired teacher as well. 30 middle school kids 6 times a day makes me less nervous than you guys. Okay, like Nancy said, this is a small story within a much larger story. That's a device I use a lot. I think I probably stole it from Barry Lopez. And all you writers in the room know that this is something we do. We steal from the writers we love. Right. Okay, The Great Black Shape. I never understood why my mom did not fight back. She was strong as 10 men. This at a time when feats of strength earned you the same regard money and looks get you nowadays. My dad was strong too, but unlike my mom, he had never lifted a whale. He knew how to use his hands though. Before he got his own boat, he hired onto some Finn's trawler out of Port Angeles. And being the only Indian, he learned how to make a pretty good fist. I seen him punch the ice on our cistern, a private show of anger that didn't earn him nothing in my book. My mom never did that, and maybe that was the difference between them. I don't know. I was only 12 years old, and I heard their fights muffled through a wall. I was too young to know there might be other stories never told. What I do know is this. One night, many years ago, the waves left a California gray whale on the beach, a great heaving hump of black on the wet sand. We could see it from our porch in the morning, and a dozen families rang their bells, calling everyone down. The men were already out on the boats, and it fell to the women and children and elders to lift the darn thing. It was like trying to lift a mountain off the earth itself. One woman named Lois gave up early and went to get her shotgun. And that's when my mom lumbered down the road and onto the beach. She paced off the whale, scowled at the skeptical faces, and with a roar louder than the ocean's waves, she hoisted that whale's tail flukes over her shoulder. We all stepped in and pulled then, and the whale inched across the sand. We sang men's songs and found strength in our backs that we didn't know we had. Still, my mom was the one who got that whale into the waves that day. What good are 50 cowards to one brave heart? And by sundown, when the men brought in the boat, the story had my mom hauling that whale all by herself. She was walking tall. She swaggered her big hips and she pushed up her sleeves to show off her biceps like a man. Some folks said she tied Lois's shotgun into a pretzel. Children danced around her, and for one special day, I could imagine that there was no fighting, no more fighting at all. My mom lifted me and my sister over her head, one laughing girl in each meaty hand, and we stuck out our arms, fluttered our fingers, and pretended to be birds.
Well, Jennifer Nightingale will carry us out tonight. We'll end the evening with a poem from the Wrack line. It contains a message that many of us have carried with us for at least 3 years. Please help me welcome Jennifer Nightingale.
And I'm dumping everything upside down.
And her poem is called Gifts from the Wrack line.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you all for some extraordinary stories. And the next time I see entering the tsunami danger zone, I will think of more.
And denial.
Yes, we love denial. Glasses are getting all kind of steamy. Gifts from the Wrack line. The rising tide leaves gifts, both expected and unexpected. She leaves bundles of eelgrass, sugar kelp, moon jellies, crab legs, razor shells, and barnacle-infested rope. Shotgun wads, tiny bottles of flavored whiskey, bait boxes, and even a dead pinniped. In early March of 2022, we heard the news. We saw images, photographs from a half a world away. The Ukraine under siege, hospitals bombed, patients buried in rubble and hanging wires, sooty baby strollers with gray babies, a single cello crushed and silenced forever amid the numbing dust. A woman on her knees screaming prayers to an empty sky. Then here on our river beach, 8 beautiful sunflowers washed up. They were ramrod straight, knotted together in blue and yellow ribbons, choked with eelgrass, dulse, and gutweed. I gathered them up, plucked away the detritus, laid them down in the dunes, and I offered up a prayer. Where did these flowers come from? Why 8? I can only suppose that somewhere upriver, Ukrainian people with breaking hearts gathered by the shore to find solace, sang hymns in their mother tongue, and let the sunflowers ride the currents. I keep patrolling the rack lines, finding lost flowers and lemon rinds, toy soldiers, sealed packs of condoms, a light bulb speckled with barnacles. I take what the rising tide offers and haul away what doesn't belong.
Good night, Grace.
Good night, Grace.
All right, that is kind of rounds it out tonight, but I wanted to ask if anybody has any questions of our writers. Do you have any questions at all? Or any comments? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll ask the writers to name their animals. Roger, did you have something that you wanted to? Oh, Doug has it. Okay. So we are going to honor our writers tonight with a little token of our appreciation.
Oh,
Tonight we have posters, right?
Well, I need those.
Yes, library.
So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your attendance. We appreciate you submitting your entries. And next year, please, everybody, please be aware we will have another one of these.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.